Before I get started on this video, I just want to say thank you to anybody who watched my previous video. It's now sitting at over 6K views, and I've gained over 40 subscribers, now sitting at 73 subs, which is, for me, absolutely massive accomplishment, and I'm extremely proud that that video hit as much as it did. The fact that there's just hours upon hours of people enjoying hearing my opinion and listening to me ramble is mind-blowing to me. So yeah, I appreciate everybody. Thank you for subbing. Hopefully we can get closer to 100 subs with this video and keep on pushing on. So thank you guys. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Roadhouse. The name's Dalton, and today I want to show you a build I've been having an absolute blast playing recently. We're going to be quickly going over how it works, the pros and cons of the build, when does the build really come online, what items do you need, the gems and the supports inside of them, leveling the build, and the item filter that I'm going to provide for you if you want to use it. So that's all. As always, the timestamps will be in the description if you want to skip ahead. So let's get to it. All right, so the core of the build and the reason why we're a Pathfinder in the first place is because of this node right here, running Assault, which gives 50% less movement speed penalty while using skills while moving. Now, there's also a support gem here, Mobility, which does the exact same thing, gives another 25%. So when you add these two together, we've got a total of 75% less penalty. And then there's also a couple of passives over here on the tree. So we've got 10% here, and then 8 and 12 for a total of 20, so 30% total. So 75% less, and then from the 25% that's left over, we have 30% reduced movement speed penalty. So that ends up 17.5% movement speed penalty total is what we're left with. And once you stack some movement speed and stuff like that, you pretty much just have a row amount. So it works pretty well. You're running really fast, and I've actually seen this setup used for many other things. There was a video going around of a Pathfinder doing like incinerate, just channeling incinerate constantly while not ever having to slow down. And it's a pretty cool setup that you could kind of go wild with and do with all sorts of builds. All right, so you're probably asking, what are we using all this reduced movement speed penalty for? And the answer is to sustain Rapid Shot. Now, Rapid Shot is the skill that ties this all together and makes the build work in general. So Rapid Shot, you see the bottom here, gains 4 heat every second while firing, and the heat gives your grenades and Rapid Shot itself 6% of damage as extra fire damage per heat. So I'm getting up to 29 heat, which is 174% of extra damage as fire damage, which is absolutely insane. And in order to be able to sustain that, we need that movement speed penalty, because you want to fire this constantly to be able to continuously stack up all the time. You want to stay at max charges, and if you don't have all that movement speed penalty, you're just going to be miserable, slogging along, and you know, it's going to be shit. So that's basically the main core of the build, all the movement speed penalty plus Rapid Shot, and then that just makes our grenades absolutely insane. So for the pros of this build, it's extremely fast. As you see, we've got all this movement speed, all this reduced penalty, basically like having a row amount without actually needing one. We can preset up our damage on bosses. Plays a lot like traps or mines from PoE 1 if you've played those. It's extremely fun being able to, you know, just get down those animations of bosses, time when they're going to actually come out and be able to be damaged. And if you can get that just right, get all your grenades kind of stacked up and everything to explode just on time, it's an absolute blast watching them just be deleted before they can do literally anything. So quite a fun play style. We also have a lot of sustainability due to Pathfinder's Enduring Elixirs node, which makes our life flask keep going even if we hit full. So normally your life flask would stop when you hit full life, and then if you get hit again, you know, you don't regain that life. But with this node, that keeps going. So if you hit full life, your life flask is still going, you get hit, you're just going to heal back up immediately. And we also are using Chevron's Satchel, which makes our life flask apply to energy shield as well. So we constantly are regenerating both life and energy shield at the same time, which makes us, you know, unless we take an extremely chunky hit, we're pretty much just going to survive all the time. Mapping is extremely comfortable because all these mobs doing this little chip damage, you're just healing through all of it, barely have to pay attention. It's pretty cozy. Also, it's extremely easy to gear. That's the only unique item you need. The rest of this is all just rare items to fill in stats. Maybe a couple of, like I said, stats or resistances, damage, yada yada. Just whatever you need. But other than that, that's really all you need to gear. As for cons of the build, some people like a build that comes online extremely early. This build doesn't really come online until at least after the second lab, because you need to have running assault, and because of that, you also are lacking a little bit of damage because none of the nodes that you're taking on your ascendancy give you damage. You're going from speed is unaffected by slows into this. So you probably want to compensate with as many damage nodes as possible early, so that way you're still doing some decent damage. And even after the second lab, you might still feel a little bit weak until you get some attack speed and stuff going, so that way you can keep up your rapid shot while shooting your grenades, and it'll feel comfortable. Because whenever you're at a slower attack speed, it doesn't necessarily feel that comfortable because there's a small delay before you start shooting your rapid shot again. So, as I said, comes online a little bit late. Some people might not necessarily like that. Um, the only other real con of this build is that whenever enemies move a lot, like bosses that teleport from one place to another, it can be extremely annoying. Sometimes, you know, you'll just, if you don't have the timing right and you're not familiar with the boss, you're just going to fire all your grenades under them, and then they'll teleport to a different spot. And then maybe that happens 2 or 3 times until you get the timing down on the boss and know kind of how they work a little bit. Then you can kind of work around that. But until then, it can be a little bit annoying. And for the last con, the only other thing I can really think of, it's not Lightning Spear. As for items needed, there's really only one, maybe two things that you can consider. The main thing is Chevron's Satchel. This thing gives life recovery from flasks, is also applied to energy shield. This makes it where our Pathfinder notes that our life flasks are not removed when we're full is extremely strong. So even if we're at full life, it's going to continue healing energy shield if we lose any, as well as healing any life if it goes down. The only other item that I would consider that you might want is a gem that has skill mana cost converted to life cost, which will help you enable activating your health potions, because generally you can't use a health potion unless you lose life. You know, like I can't just sit here and spam my health potion, but if I, you know, I'm firing my skills, I can use a health potion because I'm costing life. So the other alternative to that, you don't have to do that. That's probably the best way. But you can also potentially allocate heavy buffer so that 5% of all damage taken bypasses your energy shield, which then, you know, anytime you take damage, you'll get a little bit to your life, which then you can activate your flask, and then you're going to be recovering for a while and everything's going to be golden. So that's pretty much all you need. And like I said, the rest of it's just rares for damage, energy shield, evasion, and resistances. All right, so we're going to go over all of our gems and support, and I'm going to take my time with this. That way I can make sure to answer any questions people might have and kind of give you some alternatives and explain some of my thought process behind the decisions for some of these. So rapid shot, first up we have fresh clip. This one is just a clear pick for this skill. Obviously, it's 1% more damage for each bolt reloaded, and you know, we've got, let's see, 87 bullets in our clip right now, so every time we reload, this skill is getting 87% more damage for 6 seconds, which we can fully fire our clip and reload in that time. So absolutely insane damage spike, as well as mobility. This is pretty much required, as we showed before, add more of that movement speed penalty. Martial tempo, it's just more attack speed. This is kind of debatable whether or not you'll want this, really, because more attack speed means that you're firing your clip more, which means that you have to reload more often, which kind of takes away from being able to hold up your heat stacks. But actually, rapid shot does a fairly decent amount of damage once you get all your heat stacks built up and stuff. So I like having it just that way. You know, sometimes I just go up on a rare and just absolutely just gun them down, and it's a blast. So not bad. Execute, again, just another generic damage modifier to help out. You could replace this with anything else you want, if maybe like Culling Strike or anything else you wanted to. Fork, this is just a little bit of extra AoE. Doesn't hurt our single target at all. The less damage only applies after the damage forks, or after the bullet forks, so it doesn't lower our single target at all. Kind of helps add a little bit of extra clear, which again is completely optional. You don't necessarily need it because our grenades do a lot of the clear for us, but it still feels pretty good. All right, next up on the list we have explosive grenade. Now this thing is actually fucking insane. If you haven't really looked at this and checked out the numbers, explosive grenade for my gem right now at level 25 does 1,274% damage. Now, just think of that like a hammer of the gods, and I shoot 3 of them every time. So imagine 3 hammer of the gods just smashing down on a motherfucker and obliterating them into pieces. That's kind of what this skill feels like. It hits extremely hard, feels extremely good, and yeah, that's pretty much all there is to say. So this is our main damage. Basically use this for bosses and stuff. We run payload, reduces the cooldown, but gives them a 50% chance to activate a second time. I'm running concentrated effect, which lowers the area of effect, but gives us more area damage. The goal here, I actually plan to swap this out with fire infusion, but I'm not doing this currently because I have a crossbow and some other items that give, you know, lightning damage, and I have a decent chunk of cold damage. So, you know, you can see here I have a decent chunk of cold damage, and I don't want to lower that by 50% yet. But ideally, you know, the best setup in my head is to get as much fire damage and physical damage as possible. That way you can fit in fire infusion, not lose this 50% area of effect, and still get a massive damage buff. So moving on, we have just generic damage supports: primal armament, elemental focus, and deliberation. All of these are just generic damage with, you know, just minimal downsides. That way we can do as much as possible and just explode bosses and rare mobs with no issues. For all of our AoE and our clear needs, we use flash grenade. This thing's actually pretty crazy. If you look at it, the AoE is pretty massive. Not only that, it has a 0.85 second detonation time. So very good for clear, doesn't leave you hanging like the explosive grenade waiting for it to detonate, and just will absolutely explode all of the small mobs without any issue, really. Backing that up with Herald of Ash for a little bit of extra explosions, and we have some really great clear. So because this clears out mobs pretty well and doesn't need a whole lot of damage, honestly, we're going to use stuff like this. We use Magnified Effect for 30% more area of effect, and we also use Reach. Now, Reach says it gives 80% less accuracy rating against enemies within 2 meters, and gives 35% more area of effect. Now, how this works with grenades, I'm fairly sure, is you basically never notice this downside and never miss with it. I'm pretty sure this is 80% less accuracy rating against enemies within 2 meters of where you initially throw the grenade. So, as long as you keep moving and you are away from that area, you're not going to be near the area where the 2 meters was. So, pretty much it doesn't matter the explosion, and you are gone from that area and you're just getting free AoE. So, momentum, because we're moving constantly, we always are able to move this at 2 meters during the single use, which gives us that 40% damage. It's really nice. We're just constantly running and tossing grenades, so we're constantly keeping this damage buff up. Ingenuity for more cooldown, that way we just never run out of our grenades. And then the last one, this one's completely optional. This one just increases the detonation time, but like I said, it has a very good detonation time already, so it's kind of whatever. You can maybe add a little bit more damage there if you wanted to, or some sort of support, but in general, I think that's probably the best fit because we don't really need more damage. Just to quickly cover the rest of all of like the support type skills, we have oil grenade, which goes oiled ground, slowing enemies by 30%. Also, this is our main source of fire exposure, which lowers enemies resistance by 20%. We're running this with strip away for increased exposure effect, despoiler, which makes the ground last longer. Encumbrance makes that slow just a little bit stronger, and domain, this is so that normally whenever the oiled ground catches fire, it turns from oiled ground into a burning ground instead and loses its slowing effect and stops applying more fire exposure. So the domain allows it to keep staying. We don't just burn it up, and it just stays on the ground, slowing everything and applying that debuff for us. Next, we've got flammability with just, generic curse support gems, reduced delay, increased magnitude, got more effects. That way I don't have to worry about reapplying it if a boss happens to take a little bit. And then we've just got our auras. So Alchemist Boon, this gives increased life recovery from our flask. Also gives us some life flask charges every second, which is nice. Helps us sustain and make sure we keep this up at all times, even if we go into a boss fight or something that we're under geared for. Wind Dancer, just great for any evasion build. Just adds a lot of extra evasion. Herald of Ash, this just helps our clear a little bit more. We just toss out flash grenade, and like you saw in the previous clips, the flash grenade triggers the Herald of Ash explosions, and pretty much all of your trash mobs are just gone. So absolutely great. And for companion, this is where you kind of have a couple of options. I would recommend going with a haste aura. That way it just makes the build feel even better, gives you even more attack speed and movement speed. That way you can continue to run and gun and everything's smooth. The only other thing that I would probably suggest, if you really are, I don't know, having problems with survivability or something, maybe you could take the invulnerability aura that I made a previous video on. But in general, we don't really struggle with survivability or anything on this build, so I would just try to grab one with a haste aura, make everything play smooth, and just call it a day. And then we socket this with just stuff to make it more tanky. So meat shield and last grasp, so it continues staying for 4 seconds if it does die, as well as loyalty, which makes it take 10% of damage from us. Extremely nice for boss fights and stuff. It'll take 10% of our damage from us, and even if it does die, it stays up for 4 seconds, which is usually long enough for us to finish out the boss fight. So absolutely goated. Love the companions. I want to quickly go over the combo just so that people aren't confused on how to do this and preset up your boss damage. So, of course, you want to make sure that you're firing rapid shot and you try to have up your max stacks at all time. But whenever you come up to a boss, generally, you're going to want to first oil grenade, then immediately throw out all of your explosive grenades, and then throw down your curse circle. Curse circle explodes just in time right before all of these explode, and then the boss is just evaporated. That's pretty much all there is to it. I also, after I throw out my explosive grenades and my curse, toss out my flash grenades just for a little bit of extra damage, just in case it's needed. But other than that, just keep firing away your rapid shot, and they're probably dead. So one of the sad realities of crossbow right now is that the lower level skills just really aren't all that great for leveling. Generally, they require a little bit more setup or, power before they start feeling good, really. So I would probably just stick with something that feels strong right off the bat. Maybe just grab a bow, stick with lightning arrow and lightning rod. I would probably do this until you get to level 18, and then if you can get gas arrow and buy radiant grief helmet, which ignites everyone around you, so it's kind of like an automatic explosion. You fire the gas arrow, they ignite from the helmet, and then this explodes the gas arrow. It does a lot of damage. This would be a really good leveling setup to get you to where you want to go. So you want to keep doing something like that until you get not only your second lab, but then also path towards this node and this node up here. So that way you get the reduced penalty for movement. And until you do that, I would just stack up as much damage as absolutely possible. You could path through these projectile damage nodes up here, go more projectile damage here, continue pathing, maybe take these for the pen, even more damage. Skip this stuff for now. You could take this if you want, just for a little bit of beef. Continued for more damage, more damage. Maybe you could path over here, take Herald of Lightning early, and use that for your lightning arrow, or Herald of Ash, and then that'll work with your gas arrow, get a nice little damage chunk. But you're probably just going to want to take as much damage as you can early on to help supplement that pathing that you're going to need and the lack of ascendancy giving you any strength. So I do have a custom filter that I've made and I've uploaded for you guys to use. This will progress you through the campaign and into the end game. But as Alkaiser said, using another man's filter is kind of like wearing his underwear. So I highly recommend you get used to editing your own filter and how to use Filter Blade so that you can kind of cut your own stuff out. There might be a couple things in here that you want to see that I have cut out. For example, the cheapest uniques out there that are only worth like maybe 1 exalt at max. All of those are cut out and you won't see any of those with my filter. So if you want to see stuff like that, then by all means, learn how to make your own filter. It's for the best and it'll help you in the long run. But I've got it below. All you need to do is download the zip, come into your game, and open the filter file folder, and then just drag the contents in here. It comes with custom sounds. I have sonic sound effects that, like, the coin and stuff like that. So if you're interested in that, it's down below. Feel free to download it, and hope it helps you out. That's pretty much all I've got for this video. If there's anything that you feel I missed, or if there's anything that's confusing you, feel free to leave a comment down below and I'll get to it as soon as possible and try to answer you and help you out and fix any issues that you might be having with the build. Again, I want to thank anybody who subscribed from my last video. It's still crazy to me that people give a shit about my opinions. I'm just, a guy out here talking about the game that I'm addicted to and I play way too much. So that's about all I've got. Hope this helps. Hope you guys enjoy the build if you decide to play it. Peace.